I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories, but here we are. It all started with me planning something unforgettable for our 20th wedding anniversary, and ended with me tearing down everything I thought I'd built. Not with rage, not with screaming, but piece by piece in silence. 2 decades married. 20 years together. By then, you'd think a couple either has something solid or they're just 2 people sharing a roof. I wanted us to be the first kind, the real deal. So I went big. A once-in-a-lifetime kind of gesture. I booked a trip to the Maldives. Not just any trip, the kind you see in glossy travel magazines or on Instagram. A villa on stilts over crystal water, white sand stretching for miles, sunsets that make you believe in magic again. $10,500 paid in full. My gift to Marissa. My way of saying, look how far we've come. Now, that kind of money doesn't just fall from the sky. I'm a structural engineer. Sounds impressive, but in reality, it's hours of numbers, stress tests, late nights. I picked up every overtime shift I could. While my friends were out watching games, I was hunched over a laptop with cold takeout, checking calculations. Also, Marissa could sip cocktails under the sun and maybe, just maybe, remember that I was still the man who loved her. That was the picture in my head. We have 2 kids. Carl, 16, a gamer through and through. If the world ended tomorrow, he'd survive as long as the Wi-Fi stayed on. Then there's Lucy, 19, and glued to her mother's side like they were a packaged deal. If Marissa sneezed, Lucy had tissues in hand before I even noticed. For years, I thought it was sweet. Lately, it felt like I'd become the outsider in my own family. And Marissa? Somewhere along the way, she stopped being my partner and started being my roommate. Always on her phone, smiling at some unseen joke, brushing me off with excuses about work or her photography studio. I wanted to believe it. For a while, I did. But you know when a story feels too polished, too rehearsed. My gut started whispering, and one night I listened. She was in the shower. Her phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing nonstop like it had overdosed on caffeine. I picked it up. And there it was. Message after message from Jordan. That Jordan. The college fling. The guy she swore was ancient history. Turns out history was alive and well. These weren't harmless check-ins. These were full-blown plans. Can't wait to see the Maldives with you. Like old times, but better. My chest went tight. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but I didn't explode. I didn't storm into the bathroom waving her phone like evidence in court. Instead, I sat down. I read every message, scrolled back through weeks, maybe months. I pieced the whole thing together, and the calmer I got, the clearer it all became. This wasn't just Marissa. Lucy was in on it, too. Messages between them about keeping Dad off your back and don't mention Jordan. My wife of 20 years, planning our anniversary trip with her ex. My daughter, covering for her, and me, I was nothing more than the ATM funding it. Most men would have snapped. I get it. But I refused to give them the satisfaction. They wanted a show, rage, tears, drama. I wasn't about to play that role. So when Marissa came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, smiling like she hadn't just detonated my life, I asked about dinner. I joked about the dog snoring louder than Carl's headset. I was ice, calm, controlled. Because here's the thing. I'm an engineer. My whole career is about making sure structures don't collapse under pressure. And when a beam goes rotten, you don't rip it out with your bare hands. You bring in the right tools, the right timing. You dismantle the structure piece by piece until nothing is left standing. That's exactly what I planned to do. So while Marissa was busy daydreaming about her romantic escape with Jordan, I was running calculations of my own, screenshots, bank records, calendar entries, quietly moving money around, pawns sliding across the board one by one. She thought she was slick. She had no idea she was playing against someone who designed skyscrapers for fun. Carl was still clueless, yelling into his headset at strangers online. I didn't bring him into it. Not yet. But I knew the day would come when he'd need to see the truth. And when that day arrived, I wanted him to know his father didn't crumble. He rebuilt, so yeah, that's where it began. Me, the clueless husband, booking a dream trip for our 20th anniversary. My wife and daughter plotting to hand my ticket to her ex. They thought I'd roll over. They thought I'd accept it. But they underestimated me. I wasn't just their wallet. I wasn't their fool. I was already planning the demolition, and when the morning of the trip finally came, Marissa humming around the house, acting like the star of her own love story. I knew one thing for sure. The chapter she thought she was writing? That book was already closed. I was drafting something new. She moved through the house like she belonged in a cheesy travel ad. Sunny smile, dramatic little poses, Lucy glued to her phone but pretending to help with the bags. I played along, sipping coffee at the counter, letting their show run its course. "All packed?" I asked, leaning like I owned the calm. "Yeah," Marissa answered, smile too wide, too practiced. They decided Lucy and I would head to the airport first with most of the luggage. "Less hassle at check-in," she said. "Less hassle, sure. Less chance I'd spot the boyfriend sneaking along, more like." I nodded, casual as a man who thinks he knows the script. They kissed me on the cheek like thieves sharing a secret and hauled their suitcases to the door. I watched them load the car from the window, stomach knotting, and couldn't help the small, bitter smirk that tugged at my mouth. They thought they were slick. They thought I'd still be the clueless husband lugging their extras. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Lucy, Dad, Mom didn't know how to tell you. Jordan's going instead. She deserves to be happy. Just stay home." Reading it was like someone had driven a blade between my ribs. I typed 2 words back. "Got it, Kurt. No rant. No grief. I refused to give them the drama they wanted. Let them sit in their triumph, puzzled by my silence. Silence is a sharper weapon than a shouting match. While they were probably high-fiving in the car, thinking they'd pulled off the perfect coup, I started moving. First, I cut the money taps, froze the joint cards, moved the cash into a private account I'd opened months earlier when suspicion first flickered. I left just enough to make it look normal. Watching people realize the well's dry when they're thirsty has its own ruthless satisfaction. Next, security. I called my locksmith, scheduled same-day lock changes, rerouted every camera feed to my phone. If they wanted to play dirty, I wanted every corner covered. Carl was still in his room, headset blasting. I knocked. He spun around, annoyed, then took one look at me and the annoyance died. "Log out. We need to talk." I told him everything. The messages, the Maldives plan, Jordan. His face emptied into disbelief, then folded into fury. "Mom's messed up," he said, that stunned, angry cadence only kids can hit when they realize their whole world's been edited behind their backs. I put a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't know. That's what matters. We're not chasing them. We're not begging. We're letting them choke on their own plan." By lunchtime, movers were quietly on call. A property I'd bought across town, Riverside, 3 bedrooms, nothing fancy, suddenly became our lifeboat. I let Carl think this was temporary while I set the bones of a new life. Meanwhile, Marissa, Lucy, and Jordan were pulling up to the airport with all the swagger of people who think victory belongs to them. What they didn't know was that I'd already killed the fantasy. Flights canceled, villa reservation nuked, the Maldives dream vaporized before they could check in. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't need to. I could smell the humiliation, the clerk's polite apology, the pause at the keyboard, the panic that replaces a smile. 20 years of work, overtime, $11,000, reduced to a red-faced meltdown in public. The calls came in fast, Marissa furious, Lucy pleading. I let them pile up unread. Silence was the move. I carried on packing with Carl, his PC tower strapped into the truck like a precious child, and for the first time in months, a calm I hadn't felt in years settled over me. They'd thought the game was over. They hadn't even realized I hadn't started playing yet. That house. Yeah, that was next. By the time Marissa was still stranded at the airport trying to sweet-talk some poor airline rep into resurrecting a dead reservation, I had a locksmith spinning new locks on my doors. Keypad entry, cameras front and back, even one in the garage, all feeding straight to my phone. It wasn't just about keeping them out. It was about control, proof, my house, my rules, and if that wasn't enough, her precious events business was next on the list. She ran her little company out of a rented office, but every booking, every invoice, ran through the family email. The one I paid for, the one I owned. So I logged in, typed up a neat little autoresponder, and with a single click, her empire hit pause. Events temporarily paused due to restructuring. Translation: Good luck planning weddings when the groom's tux shows up and the planner doesn't. By afternoon, Carl and I were setting up shop at Riverside, the investment property I bought years back and almost forgot about. 3 bedrooms, modest backyard. Nothing glamorous, but in that moment it felt like a fortress. Carl had his PC rig humming within an hour, while I sat on the couch with a cold sandwich and my laptop. I actually laughed. My wife was stranded at an airport with her ex, while I was eating in peace with the only kid who hadn't betrayed me. That evening, my phone buzzed. Camera alert. I pulled it up, and there they were, Marissa, her mother, and some random locksmith trying their luck at the front door. The house, in my name only, bought before the marriage, deed copy ready for the cops. And her mother, God, the woman had hated me since day one. Sweet as honey in public, but behind closed doors she'd make it clear I was never enough for her precious daughter. Now she was flapping her arms like she owned the place. The locksmith hesitated, probably sensing the storm, until blue and red lights painted the driveway. I'd already called ahead, told the cops what to expect, and right on cue they rolled up, watching Marissa try to explain herself to 2 stone-faced officers. Pure comedy. She stomped, waved, pleaded. They didn't budge. Finally, one of them motioned to the locksmith to pack up. Marissa's mother looked ready to detonate, but in the end they had no choice but to leave. My house. My rules. Carl leaned over watching the feed with me. Damn, you really thought of everything. I smirked. Kid, this is just the first layer. Because demolition isn't about swinging a hammer at one wall. You take the beams, the supports, the foundation, and when you're finished, the whole thing lies in rubble. That night, Marissa called again. I let it ring. Then a text. We need to talk like adults. Funny how like adults always means forget what I did and give me what I want. I shut my phone off, leaned back, and for the first time in years, felt a real wave of calm. They thought they were playing me, but they were just pawns on my board, and I hadn't even moved the heavy pieces yet. See the vacation stunt? The lock change? That was just warm-up. The jab before the knockout punch. The real work started with the house. Every design choice she'd ever forced on me, gone. The marble fireplace she swore we needed, smashed. That farmhouse kitchen she bullied me into, cabinet by cabinet, ripped apart. I had a crew working double shifts, and I was there every morning, coffee in hand, watching her vision crumble. Foreman asked, "Want us to save this tile?" Still decent. Nope, I said without blinking. If she picked it, it's trash. By week's end, the place looked like ground zero. And honestly, it felt good, therapeutic, like I was peeling her fingerprints off my life. Meanwhile, I moved on the legal front. Divorce papers, adultery, and financial theft. My lawyer stacked the evidence into a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. Bank transfers, vendor scams, emails with Jordan that read like some high school love story. She thought she was clever, siphoning cash under my nose. I tracked every dime, filed it Monday morning. Even the court clerk raised her eyebrows. This is substantial. So was the betrayal, I said. Later, my phone lit up with her name. Against my better judgment, I answered. George, this is childish, she said, voice sugar-coated like always. We need to talk like adults, I cut her off. Adults use lawyers. So talk to mine. You're really going to let an attorney decide the fate of our family? She pushed. No, I said flatly. You decided that when you invited your ex to paradise with my money. And I hung up. Minutes later, the texts rolled in. We can work this out. Don't do this to the kids. Cute. Using the kids as a shield. Except one of those kids was already packing boxes by my side, loyal as ever. And the other? She'd already picked her team. By then, Lucy was already under my roof at Riverside, but the energy was different. She moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, careful, always bracing for me to lose it. But I didn't. I wasn't the one with something to prove anymore. When the tuition bill came, that was the breaking point. She'd been enrolled at Westfield Academy, $15,000 a semester for a school that was more about appearances than education. It was her mother's prized trophy, the ultimate Instagram brag. Look at my daughter, she's elite. But to me, it was a money pit, bought with loyalty I hadn't received. So I pulled the plug, canceled the check, called the school myself, and told them Lucy was transferring to state. Her scholarship still applied there, so she wasn't losing her future. But the luxury dorms, the prestige, the shiny badge of Westfield, gone. When I broke the news, she erupted. "You can't just take that from me. I worked so hard, those words hit me sideways." "Worked hard?" I stared at her, steady, letting the weight hang in the air. "You worked hard at helping your mom shove me out of my own anniversary trip. You knew she was draining the accounts, and you still thought I'd bankroll your dream school?" Her face flushed deep red, her voice rising. "It's not fair. I didn't raise mine. I didn't have to. Fair ended the second you picked sides." My tone was calm, almost surgical. And in that moment, she knew it. This wasn't her father lashing out. This was a man setting boundaries that had been ignored too long. She went quiet, shoulders slumped, chewing on her lip. The silence between us said everything. She was finally realizing this wasn't temporary. This wasn't Dad's tantrum. This was permanent. A line drawn in stone. Meanwhile, Marissa was unraveling. What started as angry voicemails had quickly turned into desperate legal letters. Her lawyer leaned hard into the sympathy narrative. The poor, neglected wife married to a cold, distant workaholic. The script practically wrote itself. He never gave me affection, so I had no choice but to find it elsewhere. Cute story, but I didn't walk into mediation begging for pity. I walked in with proof, not just proof of her affair, though I had that in spades, but bank transfers, shady invoices, emails mapping out her Seattle escape with Jordan. My lawyer laid them out like blueprints, precise and undeniable. The opposing attorney's face drained of color as each page turned. They'd come in with a fairy tale. They left with documentation of fraud. So Marissa pivoted. If she couldn't play the victim of neglect, she'd paint me as the villain. "George is controlling. Emotionally abusive," her lawyer claimed. I didn't even flinch. Courts sometimes eat that narrative alive, but I leaned straight into it. "Evaluate me," I told the judge. "Evaluate both of us. I've got nothing to hide." The timing of her sudden therapy notes was laughable. Records that just happened to start the exact month she began funneling cash out of our accounts. Convenient, right? The judge wasn't impressed. When you're calm, when you're steady, when you've done your homework, people notice. I wasn't throwing accusations. I was laying out evidence like an engineer with schematics. Cold, logical, undeniable. And as for Jordan, Mr. Photographer Extraordinaire, word travels fast in my industry. Clients don't like drama. They don't like hiring a guy who can't keep his personal life from imploding. All I did was share the truth. Timelines, emails, quiet nudges to the right ears. His contracts dried up overnight. The high-paying gigs evaporated. Last I checked, he was stuck begging for headshot work, scrambling for scraps from small firms. Karma, maybe? Consequence? Definitely. Back at Riverside, the tension with Lucy lingered. She'd moved in, but she was still sulking, moving through each day like she was waiting for the ground to stop shaking. But I wasn't done laying foundations. When I took Westfield away, she saw it as punishment. What she didn't understand, what she couldn't yet see, was that I was ripping her free from her mother's illusions. That school, that lifestyle, it was never about her. It was about Marissa's image. And sitting across from her at that kitchen table, watching the tears pool in her eyes, I realized she was finally starting to see it too. This wasn't me being cruel. This was me being honest. For the first time in years, my house had rules. My family had boundaries. And I was the one drawing the blueprints, no rescue boats, no second chances. Just a bridge burned, collapsing into the water behind us. And Lucy? She was finally standing on my side of the shore. Carl smirked when Lucy stormed off. He could see what she couldn't. I wasn't wrong. And just when I thought the week couldn't get any stranger, Jordan reached out. Texted me from a burner number, nervous as a teenager sneaking out after curfew. "We need to talk. Just us." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Met him at a downtown coffee shop. He looked wrecked, hair greasy, suit wrinkled, like he'd been sleeping in it for days. Bags under his eyes, hands twitching on the table. He tried to start soft. "George, listen. I'm sorry. The trip with Marissa, it wasn't supposed to go down like that." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Enlighten me. What's the proper way to stab a man in the back? Balloons and confetti?" He flinched. Tried to explain. Said Marissa told him I was cold, distant, that our marriage was already dead. That he believed her. I cut him off. You knew she was married. You knew I existed. You played along because it benefited you. Don't stand here acting like you were duped. His jaw tightened. He shifted, tried another angle. She manipulated both of us. I sipped my coffee, calm as stone. Maybe, but I'm not the one crying over lost contracts, crawling back to the husband I betrayed. That's you, and that was it. He asked what I wanted from him. I told him the truth. Nothing. You're irrelevant. I tossed a 5 on the table, left him sitting there looking like he'd swallowed a live grenade. Back at Riverside, Marissa's world was crumbling too. Her business had run on reputation, brides, corporate clients, social circles. Once word spread, she was on pause. Those contracts started vanishing faster than Jordan's gigs. Add in the fact that her equipment and records were tied up as marital assets, and she had nothing left to deliver. That night she called me, voice trembling. George, please. You're destroying everything I built, I chuckled. No, Marissa. You destroyed it yourself. I'm just clearing the wreckage. She broke down sobbing, the kind of tears meant to tug at heartstrings. But mine were cut clean. Courts will see how ruthless you are, she choked. Courts respect receipts, I said flatly. Something you never thought about while you drained our accounts. Then I hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt clarity. See, most men in my shoes fold. They get emotional, they beg, they forgive just to keep the family together, not me. I wasn't going to bankroll my wife and her side piece while they built their new life. I wasn't the sap who grovels. I was the man pulling the plug, letting the whole fake castle collapse. And Marissa, she wasn't done swinging. Instead of accepting the loss, she went for character assassination. Out of nowhere, my firm's HR called, an anonymous complaint claiming I'd been inappropriate during a guest lecture. I almost laughed. I don't even do closed-door meetings with students. Every session was in an open lounge, staff walking by every 5 minutes. I gave HR my schedules, attendance sheets, even names of the staff who were there. They buried it in days. Next came the blurry hotel photos. Me leaving with some woman they wanted to paint as a mistress. Only problem? That woman was Eleanor, a project manager from Denver. We'd been at a client breakfast, documented, signed, logged, witnessed by half the firm. Hotel footage backed it up. Another pathetic attempt. Another fail. That's the difference between me and Marissa. She played messy. I played documented. Meanwhile, Jordan finally realized how deep the hole went. Contracts dried up. Clients ghosted. His name was whispered in boardrooms with words like toxic and unreliable. One afternoon, he texted me, I'm leaving. Going back to Seattle. This isn't worth it. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. The man was already drowning. Marissa didn't take it so well. Without her shiny knight and vintage glasses, she cracked. Word spread she'd had a panic attack in the middle of a coffee shop. A week later, she was in the hospital. Chest pains, hyperventilating, the whole 9 yards. Her best friend Natalie called me, whispering like she was delivering soap opera updates. She's asking for you, George. She says she needs to see you. Curiosity got the better of me. So I went. There she was in a private room, pale, frail, hooked up to monitors. Nothing like the woman who once strutted around telling me she deserved more. The second she saw me, tears streamed down her face. You came? She whispered. Yeah, I said, standing at the foot of her bed. Why? Her lip trembled. I stared at her steady. She broke before I even spoke. Because I can't do this anymore. You've destroyed everything. I raised an eyebrow. Destroyed everything? No, she destroyed it. The business she built on stolen money. The house she schemed to sell behind my back. The marriage she torched the moment she invited her ex to our anniversary trip. She sobbed like the weight had finally hit her. I regret it. I just want it to end. I leaned in, voice steady, calm. Regret isn't repentance, Marissa. Regret is being upset you got caught. Repentance is owning it, admitting you were wrong and living with the consequences. And you're not there. You're just scared because the fallout finally landed on your lap. Her eyes were wet, desperate. So that's it? 20 years and you feel nothing? I shrugged. Respect lasts longer than love. You burned both. Now I'm just enforcing the math. And I walked out, nurses staring at me like I was heartless. But that room wasn't a reunion. It was a courtroom. And she had just confessed without realizing it. Back home, Carl was waiting at the door, half proud, half worried. "So, you forgive her?" he asked. I shook my head. "Forgiveness is for people who take responsibility. She's not there. Don't let crocodile tears fool you." He nodded, slow but certain. "Honestly, Dad, I respect you more every day. Most guys would have folded." I gave him a half smile. Folding isn't in the blueprint. Lucy, though, she was a mess. Watching her mother crumble, her ex-stepdad bail, and me stand taller than ever, it broke her. One night, she cornered me at the kitchen table. "Dad, can't you just stop?" "She's broken. Isn't that enough?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't even look up from my laptop. "The day I stop holding people accountable is the day you stop respecting me. If you want me to be that man, go live with your mom." She didn't answer. Just sat there in silence, realizing this wasn't some game with a reset button. Meanwhile, I sold the house. Mid-renovation, stripped down, a blank canvas, and it still went above asking. The court gave me full control with every dollar locked in escrow until the divorce. Cash buyer, clean deal done. And just like that, the home she planned to use as her launch pad with Jordan, gone, erased. Every design choice, every memory she forced into it, obliterated. By the time her lawyer called, begging for mediation, I almost felt bad. Almost. Instead, I told him my terms are already generous. She takes them or she walks away with nothing but her clothes. Silence on the line. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The final round came in court. My lawyer walked in with a binder thick as a brick. Marissa's side shuffled papers, hoping for magic. But judges don't care about theatrics. They care about facts. And facts were my specialty. Turns out, Marissa and Jordan had been funneling money into an offshore account. I'd suspected 30 grand. Discovery exposed 97. Every dollar traced, every receipt clean, like dots in a coloring book. And when the judge saw it, her whole story collapsed. She wasn't the neglected wife anymore. She was the fraud, the liar, the one stealing from her own husband while planning a tropical love story. Months later, the ruling came down. She walked away with scraps, 15% after sanctions. The house was gone. The accounts frozen. Her little wedding business circling the drain. Jordan's reputation tanked with hers. Their Maldives fantasy had become an industry punchline. After the dust settled, Marissa asked to meet one last time. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She sat across from me in a quiet cafe, smaller than I'd ever seen her. "George, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Can't we put this behind us?" I leaned forward, steady. "Forgiveness is for equals. And you're not on my level anymore." The words cut deeper than any verdict. I stood, dropped a 10 on the table, and walked out without looking back. That chapter closed. Life after was simpler, cleaner. Work promoted me to lead the division I'd been chasing for years. The same job they once thought I couldn't handle because my personal life was a mess. Turns out cleaning house, literally and figuratively, was exactly the kind of proof they needed. People used to say I was distracted, spread too thin. But after everything, people saw me differently, saw clarity, saw steel. Funny thing is, when you stop shaking, when you stand unmovable, people lean in. They trust you more. Carl did. That kid started looking at me with a respect I'd never seen before. He asked questions about work, about life, about how to stand tall when the world tries to break you. For the first time, I wasn't just raising a teenager with a headset glued to his ears. I was raising a man, Lucy. She was harder. She stayed close to her mom, carried guilt like a shadow. I didn't chase her. Didn't bargain for her loyalty. Love that's begged for doesn't last. Respect that's earned. She'll find her way when she's ready. And me? I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was clear. And clarity, it isn't gentle. It's sharp, like a blueprint cut into steel. You see the lines, the angles, the foundation. You know exactly what you're building and what you'll never let collapse again. Marissa thought that Maldives trip was my ending. Thought she'd cash me out, humiliate me, replace me with someone who could never stand in my shoes. But she got it wrong. I wasn't the wallet. I wasn't the doormat. I was the demolition crew. And from the rubble, I rebuilt. Stronger, sharper, on my terms.